A very good evening to you watching us right now. This is Transformed Lives program only on Church of Uganda Family TV. Yeah, we thank God who has kept us safe, well, alive, even as we are drawing closer to Easter. Yeah, the Bible says that he was wounded for our transgressions and he was bruised for our iniquity. He bore our sorrow, and by his stripes we are healed. So as we remember the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, let us also remember that he was crucified. He went through all this because of me and you who is watching us today. Edrine Mukalazi is my name, and we are delighted to host another special guest who is going to share with us his special story, a unique story that you shouldn't miss. Now, who do we have today? We have the director of Refactory, the team leader of Refactory. He's none other than Mr. Niyitegeka Micheal. So you're most welcome to Transformed Lives program and Church of Uganda Family TV.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me, and looking forward to the conversation.
Sure.
Yes.
And kindly greet the viewer out there who is watching us this evening.
Good evening, viewers. Great pleasure for me to be with you, and I hope that my story will be one that will inspire you and probably pick one or two things that you can work on as we journey through life.
Okay. Now, we want to start off from Michael's early childhood life. Where did your life start from, and how was life as you were growing up?
As born in what I would say a very humble family in Fort Portal, and specifically in a place called Kijura. It's in the tea estates. My late father used to work in the tea estates, worked in the tea estates from, I guess, 1969 until he passed in 2017. That's where I was raised. That's where I was born and raised, and did part of my primary school in that area. There's a specific school called Kirumba, and later went to Kabale. From Kabale came to St. Leo's College in Fort Portal for 6 years.
Kabale, the district, or Kabale?
Kabale, the district. Kabale district. I went to Kabale for part of my primary school called St. Maria Goretti Primary School, and was there for 2 years. Then went to St. Leo's for 6 years. And after St. Leo's, went to Makerere University.
Okay. So you told us that you grew up from a purely humble family. How then do you move from Fort Portal to Kabale?
Interesting journey. We went to Kabale because there was a new school, and that our parents felt that school would give us the kind of grounding and value system from an education perspective that wouldn't get in the school that we're in Port Portal, in Kirumba. So at that time it was a long trek. It used to take us maybe about 12 hours, even sometimes 14 hours.
Did you have any relatives in Kabale?
Absolutely, yes, we did. We had a number of relatives in Kabale, and at that particular time, the then bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Kabale, the late Bishop Barnabas Harerimana, was an uncle to my mom, and that also drove, because he was one of the proprietors of the school, the directors of the school. So that kind of gave us the drive to really go to Kabale, because we believed it had, the parents believed it had what we would be ideal. And they were spot on, because it was a very good school. It grounded us and kind of prepared us for the next part of school, which is boarding school. Yeah.
So in Kabale, you were the scholar.
No, I was in boarding.
Okay.
Yeah. I was in
Now,
boarding.
how was the life, this new life in Kabale? Because I also look at the language as an issue. You're from Fort Portal now. You're going to a strange land.
Not necessarily an issue, because at school you're largely using a standard language, English. And Fort Portal has quite a number of Bachiga, so language was not an issue. And in any case, Rutora and Ruchiga are not so different, so you can't struggle to communicate if you needed to communicate in the local language.
So after primary, you now come back to Fort Portal for secondary.
Yes.
And then at this time, what are your ambitions? What did you really want to be as you're growing up, or you didn't have much about this?
Well, at St. Leo's was an interesting school. St. Leo's was, I tell people St. Leo's was a boot camp. We went, it was a tough life, but very good life at the same time. Tough life as in, that was in the early, because I went to St. Leo's in 1990. And St. Leo's really kind of pushed us in terms of survival. You had to fend for yourself. You had to build a certain level of resilience to go through the school. There was quite a lot of interesting scenarios. I tell our children. Posho experience was, I don't know how I can describe it. You know, when you go through school and breakfast will be porridge, lunch will be posho, dinner will be posho. Once in a while we'll get sweet potatoes. So it was not just about food. But I think one thing I picked and I still treasure about St. Leo's was it gave us a basis for us to grow and mature as men, because it was a boys' school only. It is a boys' school only. And that ability to mature, to negotiate through life, was a skill and is a skill that I still treasure. That's one. Two is that to a large extent we're all like more or less the same level. It didn't really care whether you come from a very rich family. You're staying in a dormitory that didn't have glasses. So it didn't really care. We all, there was an equalizer. Probably if you had money, then you could visit the canteen quite regularly. The other thing that I remember very well, it got to a point where it didn't even make sense to take grab at school, because probably majority were just arriving at school and you have nuts and that's what you're having. So for me, St. Leo's was quite an interesting experience. It was a very sporty school. I got to play a lot of sport in St. Leo's. I got to play the band. There was a lot of activity. I pity guys who go to school now and all they have are blocks. There was just too much in terms of space. I'm in St. Leo's for 6 years. Along the way, my desire was sciences, and I was not struggling with sciences. I wanted to do engineering. I was fascinated right from the time I was a young boy. I was fascinated by what engineering was all about. I remember, a story is told that when I was, it's not a story, I can remember vividly, that I think when I was about 5 or thereabout, I ran away from home and spent the entire day in a garage, because we're next to a tea factory. And there was this engineer, British guy, who liked me, and so for the entire morning I was in the garage, and at lunchtime he took me home and said, I've brought my staff home for lunch. And so my desire for engineering begins from there. I start exploring a lot of things, and then get into I think senior 4 vacation. I got a job as a spanner boy in the tea factory. So worked there for 3 months, 2 months. 3 months. I think it was 3 months. I remember, yeah, I was earning 300 shillings a day. By that time, it was substantial, because I remember after 3 months I had 15,000, 9,000, yeah, about 15,000. That I used to buy like my entire senior 5 shopping requirements that I needed. 15,000 was a lot of money. Forget about the 15,000 you're seeing these days. And then go to A levels and do physics, chemistry, math with fine art. But exams are exams, and results didn't come as I had expected, so I couldn't be admitted to do what I really wanted to do, which was architecture. Yeah, I was fascinated by designs. I remember in St. Leo's I did technical drawing. I think we're only like 3 of us who did technical drawing. I guess for me, the whole principle of there is a structure was something that drove me into doing what I was doing at St. Leo's. But life has its own way of taking you into direction. So I find out that I'm admitted to do a Bachelor of Arts in Arts, Philosophy, Organizational Studies and French, and I'm like, but who does that? I never applied.
In the first place, you qualified with sciences.
No, I studied sciences. I didn't qualify to do an engineering course and do architecture. So I'd applied to do urban planning, which was a new course. But even then, I didn't get urban planning. I didn't even check on any other list. I knew I had not been admitted. I was actually going to Chambogo. I was going to do the diploma in Chambogo. And if somebody calls me and he says, but I see your name on this admission list, you've been admitted to do a Bachelor of Arts in Arts, and I'm like, what is that? So I end up doing a Bachelor of Arts in Arts, philosophy, philosophy, organizational studies and French. And I can say it was a good experience. Good experience because when I got that, when I got to know that I had been admitted, I was a bit frustrated. I was not happy. As you know, when you beat yourself and you're like, I should have done better. And at that time there was this whole stigmatization that a Bachelor of Arts in Arts is a flat course, so you haven't really done good enough for you to qualify. But my late uncle told me something that really stuck with me. He said, the degree is a degree. The difference is what you do with it. And I take on the program. I start doing the BA. I totally loved philosophy. Totally. It was one of my best subjects.
What made you fall in love with philosophy?
What made me fall in love with philosophy? Because philosophy questions. Philosophy, it's the art of reasoning and reasoning knowledge acquisition. So you don't just take everything whole heart. No, there must be. So we're doing courses like the philosophy of development, philosophy of law. You're questioning the existence of law. Why do we need law in the first place? And so for me that was really, really exciting, if you asked me. And I tell people that if I had the way of changing education in this country, every person should do philosophy. Because you start seeing a lot of things, you start questioning the essence of existence. Which I find a lot of people here. Yeah, you meet somebody who is fresh from university and you try to push them a little bit and they just crumble. They can't go beyond the first answer or the first question. So
you're telling us you loved the course.
I did philosophy. I did organizational studies, and so I specialized in 2 organizational studies and philosophy. And then, yeah, I was one of the best students. Then I'm retained at Makerere. That was in 2000. So we finished in 2000, graduated in 2001. And then, yeah, I started working in Makere as an assistant coordinator in the humanities faculty of arts, which was also quite an interesting experience. But before then, when I was in my senior six vacation, then I got an opportunity to work with a coffee exporting company. So we were buying coffee from Bushenyi, Ishaka, the entire Western Axis, if I could put it that way. Again, that was another life moment for me. Like one huge life changing experience. You are working, earning, and I was able to pay my tuition fees at university through that work. And not because my father couldn't pay, but there was that whole prestige of I have worked, I can pay for my education.
So did you retain this job even as you were still studying?
Yes, so I had that job, and I was an evening student, so a number of times I would go in, do some work, but most of the times it was during the long holiday at university. Yeah, so that was a huge, I don't know, like exposure. I got to learn how businesses are done. I got to understand the principles of costing. This was not theoretical. This was something that you are doing on a daily. I got to a level where I was in charge of a station, so I was managing budgets, I was managing stock, I was like, you get to understand how business runs. Yeah, so I worked in the Faculty of Arts for 4 years. In the 4 years, I was able to enroll for an MBA at SAMI. It was an executive MBA. Again, another milestone, like I would say, one of those. So I applied to do the MBA at SAMI, and it was an interesting one. So I take my papers, and when I took my papers, I was young. I'd just done 2 years after university. And the lady receiving the papers looks at me and says, "Whose papers have you brought?" And I said, "My papers." She said, "But this is an executive MBA." I said, "Yes, I'm aware." And my answer to her was, if I'm going to be one, I need to be with them. And she looked at me and said, "Well, let me see." So my papers were taken. SAMI's headquarters are in Arusha, Tanzania. And I think a month or so later, I received a call, "Please pick your letter." I knew it was a regret letter because I was not an executive, I didn't have any experience. But guess what? I was admitted.
So who qualifies to get this executive MBA?
So typically, executive MBAs are a preserve of those that are in executive positions. So you're a director, manager, you have a senior position, because the intention is for you to learn from each other. You have experiences you can share. Now, if you're an office administrator, what experience are you going to share at strategic level? But I was ready to soldier on, and I can tell you, it was a massive experience, because it kind of placed me into where people, those who are running businesses, it got me to appreciate how they think, how they run business, which I wouldn't have done if, let's say, I was doing an ordinary MBA. We were a small class. We had MPs in there. We had, I think, one of the former army commanders was in that class. We had permanent secretaries. We had judges. It was a good class, if I could put it that way. And when I finished my MBA, I remember going to the Dean of the Faculty of Arts and telling him, "I have completed my master's. Are you going to hire me full time now?" And he said, "Well, if we are to hire anybody, can only hire somebody with a PhD." I was like, "Okay, interesting." Deep in my heart, I was like, it is time for this MBA to make money for me. So I go into the IT faculty in 2004. I got to specifically teach business courses because I had finished my MBA and I was already teaching at university, and there was an opportunity for the faculty to recruit lecturers. I took the opportunity. I applied, and I was taken on, appointed as an assistant lecturer in the faculty of IT. And I get into the IT faculty. It was another huge milestone for me, because you're getting into a place that is extremely technical. Technology, IT, at that time in 2004, software and all that was just beginning to open up in this market. And it was intimidating. You'd sit in a meeting and you hear people say certain things and you're like, eh. But I told myself, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to have influence here. I worked in that faculty for 8 years. I contributed to the design of the Masters in Information Technology. I taught on that program. I supervised students. I had administrative positions in the faculty, in charge of exams and academic programs, then in charge of corporate affairs. It was an exciting place to work because we were all a young team. I remember we used to say our average age was about 34. Like, we're really young, and like everybody got to know about the faculty of computing then, the IT faculty. Yeah, it was vibrant. So I left my career in 2013. And for me, the departure was, leaving my career was largely informed by passion, interest. Yeah, so that's in 2013 when I left my career.
So you've said that leaving Micheal, it was simply because of passion. So how can passion let you leave a job?
You get to a point where you realize it's not just coming to work, because we spend most of our time in these workspaces. And so for me, it was not routine. It had to make meaning. That was one. Two, I'd come to the realization that I was not really cut out for academics. Like mainstream academics, do a PhD, go ahead and become a professor. No, those things were just not in my DNA. So with that realization, but I love teaching. I love transfer of knowledge. I love sharing with people. And I got to the realization that I'm also very practical. I want to give knowledge and that you can start working with, that you can use, as opposed to the general class environment. And so I was just not comfortable just being there for the sake of being there. So when I got to that realization that I was not meant for, personally, it came to that realization. It's not that there were no resources for me to go and do a PhD. As actually, there was a scholarship. There were scholarships available. I remember I applied for a scholarship and I would have gotten it. But on the day of the interviews, I turned down the offer. I just left. I said, I'm not going for the interview. Because I asked myself a question: if I was to do this PhD, who am I doing it for? And the answer was very clear, that if I was to do it, I'm doing it for the university, not for me. And I said, 4 years is a lifetime for me to do something for someone else. So I jumped out. I resigned in 2013. So it's been 10 years out of the university, but still within a university environment.
Wow, this is an amazing journey. So even as we talk about this journey, because we've said that out of the university, but within the university environment, what do you mean by within the university environment?
Okay, so I told you, so one of the things when I left university, one of the things I was thinking I was going to do was go into the corporate world and work. I just didn't feel it. Shortly before I left the university, I went through interviews, got a job. I think at that time it was paying me about 16 times what I was earning at the university. But that job was an administrator job. And it just didn't make sense for me to take an administrator job for the sake of money. So one of the things that I know define me, money is not one of them. I like to live a meaningful life, life that impacts, as opposed to, if it was about money, I wouldn't even be doing what I'm doing. There was this strong desire when I left the university to do something about unemployment. I used to teach at Makere, so you'd graduate numbers of students, and then you meet them 3 years later, they're still looking for jobs. And for me, that used to bother me seriously. So deep on my heart was the desire to do something, and that something should address preparing young people for the world of work and get them employed. I strongly believed there was something that we could do different. But because I'd also been fascinated by technology, I was very sure I wanted to do it in the IT space, not anything else. I wanted it in ICT. Within the ICT space, one of the things I knew that was really, really closer and didn't require a lot of investment was the whole space of software engineering. So in 2013, when I left, I talked to a number of people, trying to share with them this whole experience and desire, and they were just not, they were not seeing what I was seeing. 2015, I met two gentlemen who wanted to do something in Uganda. They were from the UK. They wanted to do something in Uganda, and around IT skilling or training, I said, yes, I am happy to be part of this initiative on one condition, that it's not another degree program. Because I told them there are so many degrees in this country, but there are very few people that are qualifying with jobs. So if there's anything I would want to do, I'd want to do something that will enable young people to find employment. That was heavy on my heart. Actually, I tell people that's one thing God has called me to do. And so 2015, so we agree, we start in 2016. We had a couple of assumptions. Again, these assumptions were quite wrong. We thought these guys had basics. All we had to do was to polish them a little bit and they start working. Far from it, a lot of them struggled with the skills side of the game. Fast forward 2018, we partner with an organization called Laboremas. Laboremas is a tech company. They were also extremely frustrated. At that particular time, they were actually recruiting quite a number of their software engineers from India and other European markets. And they really wanted to employ Ugandans, but there were just not enough Ugandans. And yet, we were graduating people in 1,000. In thousands. So, Refactory is born in 2018-19. And for me, what excites me about Refactory is that we've been able to demystify what it means to train and prepare people for the world of work in the tech space, in the software engineering. So we take on anybody. We've designed a program that is well structured. It has two major parts. It has what we call the first 3 months, which are really getting you into understanding what software engineering is all about, how to do software engineering. And then we have the second part, which is the boot camp, which now kind of gets you your hands dirty. And then we get quite a number of job requests. So we've trained about 450 young people, young and old. We have a few people that are above the age of 40 that have done the program. And I can say we have been able to have about 90% find employment in Uganda and outside Uganda. And that for me blesses my heart, because there is a level of guarantee that if you go through our program, that I can chest thump and say this guy will do this work. And because of that, we are now getting inquiries from even out of this country. People are looking for software engineers. So it's not a very easy thing, especially if you're doing something that is non-conventional. I've told my colleagues that I believe this is our mission. This is mission work, and Refactory is a project that is not really to make us rich, but to make as many Ugandans as possible be part of the digital economy.
I know most of you were wondering, what is Refactory? Why that name Refactory? Here we are with the team leader. He's going to tell us what Refactory is, but also a lot more that we need to know about his transformational story. Michael, before the break, we had actually talked about, you were telling us about Refactory, how Refactory was born in 2018. Now, someone would really want to know, why do you choose to come up with that name, Refactory, and what does Refactory mean?
Okay, so if you're a software engineer, there is a process we call refactoring. So refactoring is where you pick a piece of software and use it for something else. So one of the names that popped up from our branding process was refactor. And in that process, somebody added the Y. And so refactory. But the Y is not a typical Y. It's a tag. It's a code tag. So if you see it, you won't see the Y.
Yeah.
But when you read it, you can see, you can complete it with Refactory. So Refactory is a training academy. We are a company so we started as a project, and in 2022 we decided to have it registered as an organization, as a training organization. And our primary focus is really skilling young people for the world of work in the digital economy space. Like I've mentioned, we've been running since 2019, and I can say without doubt that what we've been doing has been exceptional.
So you, in our first part of the story, you talked about you realizing that this is what God called you for. How do you even realize that there is anything like a calling? So in our first part, you talked about that you realized that God had called you to empower the unemployed. So how do you realize that this is even God's calling?
You see, along this work that I've done, I came across a quotation that says, when you detect that, and it's not discover, when you detect that you were created for, nature conspires. So like everything aligns to make sure that you excel. And it's one of those moments where deep down I detected that this is what God created me for. It was not to be an engineer, not to be an architect. No. God created me to be the fuel for others to drive and detect their own and get to do the stuff that they are interested in. Of course, it comes also through a process of prayer and meditation. But there are things that we all have an opportunity to do that when we do them, they kind of, like it's a click, you just connect it. It's not just a job. I strongly believe, yes, there are jobs that you will do because you have to survive. But that shouldn't be your lifestyle. Like you're just looking for survival. There are jobs that you do that connect with you, that resonate with you, that you find joy in doing them, that even if there was no pay, you find joy. Why? Because it's not just about you, it's about the impact that you're having. And I can tell you it's not been easy. I've been tested in a sense of when you run out of money and you can't keep everything running? Do you stick to this just because it's a passion, it's a mission? Or do you say, you know what, guys? Yeah, we have tried. Time has come for everybody to go and run after themselves. We've gone through that. And I can tell you, when you are connected, I think a few days ago I posted on my WhatsApp status, I said, when God comes through for you, He's never too late. And I guess that's where many of us, and especially us as believers, we need to learn to depend on God. And for me, that's where the power is. How much do I depend on God and trust Him that He's put me into this space? If I truly believe this is where I need to be, that I will trust Him for Him to come through for me. And I can tell you, out of that test has been a testimony, because we are now at a place where we're beginning to see opportunities opening up, funding coming through, contracts coming through. So I'm not worried. 2 months ago, probably I was having sleepless nights. Now, we are there. We are getting there.
So we now want to hear your transformational story, your salvation journey, to the point of realization that all you need to depend on is God.
Well, I can't say, and I can put it. I was raised in a family that really exhibited and practiced what I would say the Christianity, the trust and belief in God. I don't remember how many times our father told us, if God wills. So we were raised knowing that we can do everything that we want to do as long as it's God's purpose. So that how do I put it? Like you breastfeed your yeah. So the Christian tenets were planted in us while we were really young. And growing up, these were practices that we looked up to. Even as grown-ups, we would go home, and the one thing that was never off the list is prayer time as a family. So I've grown up praying. I've grown up knowing the power of God, because I have seen that power work in my family. I've seen the transformation in my family. So for me, it's the testimony. It's the continuation of the legacy. I can't say because this happened and then God came through. No. It's been that. And I can also pick it from my grandparents, because my late grandfather was a church teacher. And every time we visited them, even now, even when my grandmother cannot recognize me, the first thing she tells you is that we are where we are because of the foundations that our great grandparents laid in believing in the word of God. And of course, as you grow up, as you mature, you begin to experience what God is able to do. And the more you experience it, the more you then, and for as long as you accept it, because the key thing is really acceptance, that this is the will of God. I am alive because God has willed it, not because I'm super smart. No. I am where I am because this is where God has willed me to be. And for me, that's really my life principle, that I am 100% certain I am at this point because God has willed it to be that way. It's not because of luck or because of some charm. No, this is the moment that God has willed it to be. Now, do I sit back and wait because what God has no, I act on that God has enabled me to do, because the word tells us that he's given you everything and you'll be accountable when that moment comes. So I also act on that. I reach out for opportunities. I compete for opportunities because I trust if it is for me, then it will come through. I don't have to struggle for it. That kind of attitude. So my transformation is really, and I would say for me that I get to that point at university, year one. You know, when you've done sciences, your number one expectation is you're not anywhere in the humanities. Not anywhere. The minimum is, let's say, the business courses, because you've done math, you know what you can either do BCom or something. The trust that if this is what God has willed for me, it will come through for me, really begins to exhibit itself then. And so I go through this course, I am excelling, and I'm like, this is interesting. To the extent that I'm one of the best students and I'm invited back to stay at university, and I'm like, interesting. Like this, the things that started happening, and people are like, hey, you're teaching at university, which originally I would never have thought about. And then God picks me from the humanities and takes me to ICT, brings me back to where my first love was, engineering, technology, but now from a totally different angle. And just doesn't place me there, he elevates me to not just be present, but to be a person of influence. Because I am pretty sure that a number of people will know me through the IT space. Micheal Niyitegeka, the IT guy. Or Micheal Niyitegeka, the IT guy. Not so much about what I have studied. No. So, yeah, I can only testify that has been God's goodness. And we've seen it as a family. I'm blessed with an amazing wife who recently completed her PhD. She's still teaching in Makerere University. Dr. Marjorie Chomhendo Niyitegeka. And God has blessed us with 2 children. And these 2 children have also been exceptional. And they are exceptional. Like you can see a blessing before you. You can see a blessing before you because they bless us every single day. My family blesses me, and for me, yeah. So I am at peace, and I am content with where God has blessed me and the journey that He has taken me through.
Now, talking about family, someone would be really interested to know, in this busy schedule that you had as you are working here, there, and exploring a lot of things, how do you then meet Dr. Marjorie?
Well, very interesting journey. So I got to meet my wife in 1993. Yeah, 93, if I'm not mistaken. 93, 94. 93. No, 94, sorry. 94. And it was an interesting experience. I had come to visit my auntie and in Kampala, and I think to buy a few things for my A-levels. And this beautiful lady just passes by home. So the families were known to each other. And somehow you're like, this is a good person. We got married in 2005. Many people thought we were related because we were very good friends. Like I mentioned, the families were very close. And because of that, they would be at our functions, we would be at their functions. It was one family. And of course, the debate was, you're too close as relative, as family, friends, want everybody. I was like, but who else to marry than a friend? And so in 2005, we got married. So we've been married and blessed for the last 18 years. And if anybody asked me, if you came to me and you're trying to, going to that journey, the first thing is, I would say, first, become friends.
How important is this, especially when it comes to strengthening the family and the marriage? How important is it to, first of all, become friends with your partner before you can get married?
If it's true friendship, and if it's genuine friendship, there are certain things that they tell us when we are preparing for marriage, things like, I'm sorry. They will make meaning. But if it's not genuine friendship, those things won't make meaning. So for me, the one thing I treasure about our marriage is the friendship that we share. Everything else builds on that. She's my friend, I'm her friend, and we say it, thank you for being my friend, because we are believers of true friendship. The unfortunate bit is many times, the romance takes over, the whole courtship takes over, and you just lose yourself in that, and then reality hits the ground, and the story cannot make meaning. But if somebody is your genuine friend, if they did something that you're not happy with, and you said sorry, they will accept you, because that's what friendship is all about. It won't be just about the face value. That's one. The second thing is that then you get to appreciate each other better, because your friend will appreciate you for who you are. But if you don't have the kind of car they anticipated you to have, they will keep trusting that when your time comes, you'll get the car. So for me, that's what I can say, and this is what I've seen. That we celebrate life, we live life every single day. We don't have, yes, there's ambition, but that doesn't define us. Do we have a meal today? Yes. Are we happy? Yes. And for me, that's what it is. Because remember, this is lifetime.
Yeah.
And I don't want to live with somebody on a contractual basis. I'm your wife. It's a contract. No. I wouldn't want to be in that kind of relationship. So if you ask me, yes, that's one thing that I truly believe and I truly trust. And I tell as many people that I can that invest in your friendship. The other things will happen.
This is interesting. Now, there is also something important that you talked about, something that you picked from home, especially that is the way you were groomed you were groomed the Christian way, and you also said that this was passed on from even your great-grandparents to your grandparents to your parents. Now your parents passed this same to you, and I believe you're also doing the same to your children. So how important is this, and how should parents instill such values into their children that when they grow up they cannot go off the road, as the Bible says that teach your child the right way, that even when they grow they cannot get off?
So teach, the key word is teach. So teach is not by words, teach is by doing. So model that behavior that you want your children to also model. You get it? So if you say, when you get your girlfriend, respect her, but you don't respect your wife, the two are not. So model the behavior, because children learn by seeing. If you're talking about prayer, pray with them, because they will learn how to pray the way you pray. And I see it. I see how our daughter, our son pray it's something that they have come to learn how we pray. They are praying in the same direction. So what I can say is that the unfortunate bit is sometimes we have all these rules, but we probably live by a small percentage. But we expect the children to
Live by all of them.
thank you. What does the Bible say? 10 commandments. But you are the one who is like cracking all of them. You get it? So I am a true believer of model that behavior and leave the rest. That's number one. Number two, your children are your children, but invest in making them your friends. Invest in making them your friends. Why? Because let them have that level of friendship that even when things are not going well for them, they don't have to find someone else. They will come to you. And my wife and I, it's been our job. We've I don't know how I can put it. We've tried, and we know there's been a good return on investment. That our children will come to speak to us when they are struggling with one or two things. Probably they will start with us before they talk to anybody else. And for me, I am at peace. I tell people that I would rather leave my children with principles to live by than leave them with massive property with no principles to live by. Because that's what my father gave me. My father gave me the principles to live by. And everything I've done has been out of those principles. Work hard, work smart. Be loyal to what you're doing. Be genuine in terms of your friendship. And live life as it comes. So you don't have to steal, you don't have to borrow, you don't have to live in debt. No. Just to try and keep an impression. No.
So, this is an eye opener to very many parents, and so let us now look at the other side when you're not training other people on how they can do work. What occupies your other time?
Reading. I love discovery. I love investing in getting to know a few things. I love running. Running is one of those like recharge pots for me. If my body is tired, I'll go out for a 10-kilometer run. I'll come back, I'll have energy for the next 3 hours. So running really gives me a lot of... And I want to say I am in the school of learning, and I've not yet completed, because life is a learning process. So I take time off when I'm not, and I'm very intentional about having outings with my family. I'm very intentional having outings with my wife. It's not because it is Mother's Day or it is Women's Day. No, very intentional. Why? Because and going out doesn't have to be very expensive. Even just sitting out and drinking a glass of juice together. It's this. It's that attachment. So we go out, sit somewhere, and spend 2 hours just chatting. Out of home. We could have actually stayed at home and had a chat, but just going out. So I like discovering places. We visited 3 of the national parks as a family. I want to make sure, I told the kids, I said, before you leave home, when you're on your own, you must have visited this country. You must visit this country and get to appreciate this country.
Wow. This is interesting. And so as we wind up this this episode of your story, I want you to send out a message to one, the parents out there, especially when it comes to grooming. I know we've talked about this, but re-echoing it, grooming your child into who you want them to be. And then secondly, to the young people out there who have lost hope, they're disillusioned because of a lot of things.
Yeah, so clarification, don't invest in making the child what you want them to be. Invest in preparing your child for the world. Because who you want them to be is not God's purpose. May not be God's purpose. It's what you purpose. And so I don't spend a lot of time telling children, you must study this, you must do this. No, not at all. I prepare this young man and this young lady for the world, that whatever they come out with at the end of the university, they will still be able to live and have life. So as a parent, not long ago I was on the family TV with Samuel Bakutana, and Bakutana as telling parents that you as a parent, you're a career mentor, and as a mentor your work is not to prescribe but rather to facilitate. So help your child go through the life. If your child decides to be a DJ, help them see the value of being a DJ. And so yes, parenting is a lifelong process. It's a lifelong journey. You can never say never. That's number one. Number two is, as a parent, the way you were raised is not the way you will raise your child. Get to understand and appreciate the times we are living in. Number three, pray. Pray for God's wisdom, for God's guidance, and for God's courage and strength, because it's not an easy journey. But the beauty is, it's pleasurable. There's a lot of pleasure in seeing your children grow, your children manifest themselves, become who they become, in whatever form. There's a lot of joy. So invest in your child. And the one thing I learned when our children were still young is that true love for the children is not in the gifts. It's not in the artifacts that you give them. True love is 4 letters, T-I-M-E, time. Spend time with your children. It doesn't matter how busy you are. You cannot fail to find time. Why? Because it is that time that they treasure, not the things you've bought for them. I have seen that. And to you who is disillusioned and you feel like life is not worth it, God has not kept you here just to be disillusioned. You just have to find time and reason with God, and God will let you know that He has purposed for you. And you'll be amazed at the things that will open up when you just align yourself with God, because I have seen it. He's gracious, he's merciful, he comes through in ways that you probably didn't even think would be possible. So it's not too late. So don't give up. Spend, I would say, inside out. So spend more time working on the inside. Because when you work on the inside, that's where God dwells. It's not on the outside. God is in the inside. When you spend time on the inside, God comes, He speaks to you. And when you listen to what He wants you to do, He then says, I will clear everything for you. God bless you.
And bless you too. Thank you so much. This is, I don't know, I may get short of words if I try to to tag anything onto this story. Yeah. But it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for this time. I believe it is a destined time.
Absolutely. This was an appointed time.
Sure,
Yeah.
it was. And to you who has been watching us, thank you so much for choosing Church of Uganda Family TV. Edrine Austin Mukalazi is my name. We meet again next time. God bless you.